The legal tampering period is just around the corner in NFL free agency. How are things going to shake out for the Seahawks? Nick Lee and I are going to be projecting with our annual free agency simulation here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Blue Friday by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to all the 12s out there. Whether you're listening in Lacey, Washington, or across the country in Portland, Maine, we greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are drawing ever so close to the legal tampering period. And, you know, that's the key word there's legal. We know there's tampering going on behind the scenes. It happens. But the legal tampering period for NFL free agency is coming up, which means we are soon going to have a whole bunch of dominoes falling for the Seattle Seahawks. Which players of their own are they going to re-sign? Which outside free agents are they going to add? Is John Schneider going to make any more cap-creating moves? We're going to be diving into that with our annual simulation. And Nick, you and I, we're switching it up this year. I'll get to the rules here in a moment, but this is one of our favorite episodes of the entire season. It's a jam-packed Blue Friday episode that is brought your way by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Normally, we reserve the beginning of the show for some news, but the biggest news right now is we've got free agency right around the corner, getting ready to start on March 13th with the legal tampering period. And as we do every year, we are going to be simulating Seattle's free agency and offseason up to the draft. Draft will be considered in our decisions, but we're not going to be picking players or anything like that in today's simulation. But we've got 16 scenarios. It's a little bit of this or that. We're going to have two different options, and we have to pick one or the other, and it's either going to add salary cap room or cut space. We've got $41 million to work with. We can't go above that. So some tough decisions for us to make here. Let's get rolling with our first one, Nick. And some of these will be easy and some will be a little more difficult. But our first one, we're going to go to the trenches simulating free agency. Re-sign Jake Curhan. He is a restricted free agent under this premise, though. He would be brought back on a cheaper deal, $1 million cap hit, or sign Kevin Zeitler from the Baltimore Ravens, who Mike McDonald knows very well.
Well, this is going to sound weird because I got the benefit of seeing the full breadth of what we're going to do today, and so I had to kind of pick and choose and plan a bit differently. So I'm going to choose re-sign Jake Curhan, and I know that might sound weird compared to paying for that kind of player from the Baltimore Ravens, but I was really trying to be judicious on who I sign and who what money goes where. Yes, the Seahawks have a lot of cap, and it's hard not to go the just ham with shopping spree, but I'm going to be a little bit more thrifty here on this specific one and go Jake Curhan for $1 million and just build out the depth, the bottom part of the depth here. But just hold on, just wait for me. I'll catch up soon. Don't break out your pitchforks quite yet.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Curhan on this one too. I like Kevin Zeitler, but I feel like there are some fish out there that may be more intriguing. And Curhan can play some tackle. He can play guard. As a $1 million salary cap hit, that's nothing. This is a nice depth piece to bring back. Don't give him a tender, but I think at this price, it's worth it. Our next one, another restricted free agent, tender Darrell Taylor, $3 million, or sign Jadeveon Clowney and bring him back to Seattle for a second stint.
This one was fairly easy for me, and that is sign Jadeveon Clowney. I think I don't want to steal your thunder, Corbin, because you have been pounding the table for Jadeveon Clowney for a long time, ever since he got into the Mike McDonald kind of system. And so bringing him by, he had a resurgent season. One of his, and kind of amazing how, he came into the league with such hype. And I'm not saying he was a bust. He was a fine player, but, he really started to look like a first round defensive end again, like he did in his first few years in the league under Mike McDonald. And So I would really like to see that $5 million really for a guy with that kind of production and potential with under Mike Macdonald's system. And I kind of like the whole like redemption story kind of thing going back to Seattle. He was a little bit of a disappointment. He had some good moments in Seattle, but I think fans were expecting a little bit more from him, and having him come back a few years later and perhaps being better, I think that'd be a great story.
Yeah, this is going to be a simulation where you and I are going to disagree on some things. But as you were just mentioning, I've been pounding the table for this move the entire offseason so far. And Clowney really thrived in Mike Macdonald's system. I'm done with Darrell Taylor's lack of run defense to this point. Maybe there's a possibility that this ends up being something they could do both. But I think Jadeveon Clowney, this is a no-brainer for me. So I'm going to take that $5 million guy. That double-digit sacks last year, and his length really fits what Mike Macdonald wants to do. We've got our last restricted free agent here, Mike Jackson. Tender Mike Jackson or re-sign Artie Burns. And I think this one is fascinating because I think you could go either way and it would make sense.
It would. And actually, this is one of the ones I had a harder time with. I am going to go Mike Jackson. I think he had superior coverage numbers, and he had just overall a little bit better grades on Pro Football Focus, if that's your flavor. There's certainly some versatility with Artie Burns that's attractive. But I like Mike Jackson. I like what he brought last year. Again, some of this is a little bit of a wild card and unknown with Mike Macdonald's system. Like, where do they fit? Where it's a whole new defensive system. Are these guys going to be the same fit, same kind of scheme, kind of thing, or at least at the same value that they were last year in Pete Carroll and Clinton Hurts system? But I'm going to go Mike Jackson. Just pay a little bit more for what I thought was a slightly better production.
This one was really hard for me because if I had the option to re-sign Mike Jackson at a little cheaper deal, then I would have picked him. But I'm actually going to go with Artie Burns because an almost $3 million cap hit for a player who's probably not going to start for you at the cornerback spot. I just feel like Seattle's got enough needs. It's going to be difficult for me to fit some of the other things in that I want to do. So Artie Burns played some nickel, did okay there. He's played special teams, $1 million. I'm actually going to go with Artie Burns on this one. Now we're going to get away from the restricted free agents, and this is where some of the fun topics start to come into play here. Re-sign Bobby Wagner at $6 million or sign Malik Harrison, who will be a fifth-year linebacker coming from the Ravens, reuniting with Mike Macdonald.
Yeah, this is a really tough one for me. For $6 million for Wagner was a little steep for me. I'm going to go Harrison, just the familiarity with Macdonald, and kind of fits perhaps what he wants to do more in Seattle from Baltimore. So as much as it pains me, I love Bobby. I think he's a legend and easily Hall of Famer, Ring of Honor guy. And maybe for slightly less, I'd be okay taking Bobby Wagner back. But that kind of price point difference, give me Harrison.
Yeah, I'm going to side with Harrison on this one too. And I talked about him on yesterday's show, the fact that he's been a really good special teams player and he's been waiting for this opportunity. He's been stuck behind Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen in Baltimore. And Seahawks fans want Patrick Queen, and maybe we'll bring Patrick Queen in this simulation. We shall see. But I think Malik Harrison would make a lot of sense, and he's not a guy that's going to break the bank because he hasn't been a starter at this point. But when he's had his chances, he's played well. So this is tough. I would love to see Bobby Wagner back again in this scenario, though. It's $6 million. I just look at the needs Seattle has, and I'm not sure at that price point that it makes sense for them, especially in this new scheme. Our last one here for this segment, we're going back to the trenches. Sign Robert Hunt from the Miami Dolphins at $8 million. Or re-sign Phil Haynes as a depth piece at guard.
Well, here's where I might start splurging a bit more. A very well-rounded guard, Robert Hunt, can get nasty in the run game, pretty proficient in pass protection. And really, I'm at that point now. I was listening to 710 ESPN where they're talking about, looks like, with the cuts the Seahawks have made and kind of the moves, they really want to get back to what they were great at, a decade ago and what the Ravens are good at now. And that's getting nasty in the interior. And I think Robert Hunt would help accomplish that. So I'm going to go Robert Hunt here, splurge a bit more. Haynes for me, even at $2 million, he's got health issues and he's had struggles staying on the field. He was effective at times on the field, but this is where I start to kind of turn the page and really get to what the Seahawks need to do well under Mike Macdonald, and that's get good in the interior, especially not just in the trenches, Corbin, but on the interior of those trenches, and that would help with Robert Hunt. I
was really torn on this one, and originally I was going to pick Hunt, but There may be some other guard prospects in this free agent class that I feel a little bit better about scheme-wise here. And I think Phil Haynes at $2 million as a backup, he has started games at both guard spots. He's only 28. It's just $2 million. I know that stuff adds up, but I'm actually going to re-sign Phil Haynes here. I'm going to have him and Jake Curhan coming back, and those guys are not going to get guaranteed money on these deals. So if you cut him in August, cool, whatever. But I think in this case, there may be somebody else that I'm looking at the guard position, and we're going to have some other options, hopefully, here in this scenario. When we come back, we're going to continue with this simulation. We might start looking at defensive tackles, continue looking at offensive line. Could there be some more restructures? We'll get to some more scenarios coming up next here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Game Time. You shouldn't have to start ripping your hair out to look like me when you buy tickets for your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So if you want to see the Seattle Kraken late in the season at Climate Pledge Arena as they try to get into the playoffs, thanks to Game Time's awesome flash deals and a detailed stadium map, you can find awesome seats to watch the Kraken for under $100 right now. It's super easy. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets elsewhere in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download a Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It's your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined on today's show by my co-host, Nick Lee. And a special thanks to all the 12s that are tuning in for this annual free agency offseason simulation. Up to this point, Nick, we've looked mostly at restricted free agents. We've moved on from that. But I currently have $30 million in cap space available. You are in a little bit different spot because you just made a big signing, bringing Robert Hunt in as a new guard for the Seahawks. I haven't made that big spend yet, but we've got plenty of opportunities to do so here. Continuing our simulation, we're going back to the linebacker spot. Re-sign Jordan Brooks at $8 million or sign Kenneth Murray, former first-round pick from Oklahoma, at $5 million.
Well, I'm going to go spending here again. We'll see how much this dries up, but I'm going to go Jordan Brooks. I just think, even though he was with the Seahawks last year, not the Ravens, I do think that he kind of fits the profile that Mike McDonald likes in off-ball linebackers. He's more athletic than Bobby Wagner, a bit quicker, sideline to sideline. We saw that last year. Now, again, last year, building back from that injury, I wouldn't call it a down year from Jordan Brooks, but certainly I think we expect a little bit more, maybe 10%, 15% more than we saw from Jordan Brooks from this past season. Now, again, that's probably working back from a miraculous recovery. Let's not understate that from his ACL injury. So another year under his belt from that injury, and then also getting into this system that I think really does favor a guy of his abilities. I like the fit, even though he's not Patrick Queen. I'm sure those two will be compared until the end of time. But the price point I like as well. So yeah, give me Jordan Brooks at that price.
Yeah, this one's simple for me. I'm bringing back Jordan Brooks at that $8 million price point because I am really intrigued to see him play for Mike McDonald. This is a guy that's gotten the best out of Patrick Queen the last 2 years. The Ravens, I have been told this by a bunch of people, the Ravens prefer Jordan Brooks in that draft, and the Seahawks picked him before they were up. And the next pick, they picked Patrick Queen. So this seems like a match made in heaven. I think that Mike McDonald wants that chance. So $8 million, I'm willing to do that. Going to the quarterback position in this next one. Restructure Geno Smith. They have not fully maximized their ability to restructure him at this point. You could still open up another $6 million or re-sign Drew Lock, and that'll cost you $4 million like it did last year.
I'm not really ready to put $4 million on the cap hit for Drew Lock at this point. I think if you restructure Geno Smith a little further and get the $6 million, here's where I get a little bit more breathing room from the moves I've been making. So I'm going to go restructure Geno. He's been mostly healthy, staying on the field, so you won't really necessarily, hopefully not need Drew Lock in that situation. And I am still team get Geno as a starter QB1 this year, get a rookie behind him to learn in the new system with the veteran quarterback that can kind of show him the ropes, doesn't have an ego. So I like that situation. So unfortunately, that leaves Drew Lock the odd man out. But I want to restructure to get some of that money free.
I'd like to do both of these if I really could, but that's not an option here. I got to pick one or the other. So I'm with you. I need a little breathing room anyway for some of the moves I want to make. I think Geno Smith could potentially be your starter for the next couple of years. So why not do the restructure? You have flexibility now next year since you took all of Jamal Adams' dead cap hit. Not that I'm not interested in bringing back Drew Lock, but this is a really good quarterback draft class. I'm hoping Seattle is going to dip into it and they have a guy that maybe is a future starter that they draft this year. So I'm going to do the restructure here on Geno. Our next one, we're going to tight end. Re-sign Colby Parkinson at $5 million or bring in Warner from the 49ers, who's been one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL the last few years.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. Give me Warner at the $2 million mark. I like just the nastiness he brings as a blocking tight end. He's certainly no George Kittle in the passing game, but really that's not what the Seahawks want to do under Mike Macdonald, I don't think. 77.3 run blocking grade last year. So especially with what I think the Seahawks want to do is resetting their identity. And I think Warner does help him. I like Colby Parkinson, but I think as far as where the Seahawks want to go identity-wise, give me Warner.
I'm taking Parkinson at $5 million because I want to see him in Ryan Grubb's offense. This is kind of similar to Jordan Brooks playing for Mike Macdonald. The tight ends were more involved than people realize in Washington's offense. I mean, last year, Jack Westover actually finished third on the team in receptions. So they use tight ends quite a bit in the passing game. Parkinson's also been a top 10 run blocker the last few years. He's really evolved. So at 25 years old, I like Warner, but in this case, it's not much bigger of a cap hit. I'm bringing back Colby Parkinson at that $5 million price point for this year. Our next one at the safety position, extend Julian Love or sign do-it-all safety Xavier McKinney to pair up with Julian Love.
This was a really good one. I had to think about it for a second. And I've decided, Corbin, I have a little bit of PTSD from paying safeties right now. Just all the releases in the last week or so from the safeties, from Will Dissly, and seeing all this, cap room uncovered. It was like an episode of Hoarders, Corbin. It was like, you're paying that guy how much? How long has that been under your couch? How long has that been in your kitchen floor? What are you guys doing with the cap? So I'm going to go with extend Julian Love. I know that, McKinney's a very intriguing safety, but I want to be smarter. I want to build from the inside and the interior out and pour my resources into that. So I'm going to go extend Love. I like what I saw from him last year. And I think he can step right into a full-fledged starting, role. So I'm going to avoid the safety hoarder situation again, and I'm going to extend Love and reallocate resources elsewhere.
Yeah, I want to shift priorities away from the safety position too, but man, it's hard because I really like Xavier McKinney, and putting him back with Love I think would be really fun. But I'm going to go with the extending of Love too, just because he can play both safety spots. And I don't think that he was great last year. He had his moments. There were certainly some rough games too, but I think in Mike Macdonald's scheme, he's going to play at a higher level. So give me an extension of a year or two on his contract, open up some cap room in the present, and I can use that later at another position. Let's go back to the trenches, Nick, and we've got a really interesting one here. Sign Aaron Brewer, who has started games at center and guard in the NFL, kind of similar to Evan Brown, or bring back Damien Lewis at $7 million.
For that kind of price, I do like Aaron Brewer, just a capable veteran center who knows how to run block. That's really all I want, unless the coaching staff thinks that Ola Oluwatimi is ready to step in day one and be kind of the starting center there. I think that getting a veteran center is smart. So I think that in this case, with the run blocking ability, I like Aaron Brewer there at that price.
At $7 million, I'm bringing back Damien Lewis because I still think from the run game standpoint, Seahawks averaged almost 5.5 yards per carry running behind him last year. And I think Scott Huff can unlock his full potential. I really believe in Scott Huff as an offensive line coach. He understands the technique stuff. He really knows how to get guys to the next level. We've seen what he did at Washington. So this is, again, another one of those guys, a different coaching staff. I'm just wondering, can we see a totally different player in Damien Lewis and maybe moving back to right guard where I think he was significantly better his rookie season. But I'm willing to pay that $7 million price point on a guy that's a 4-year starter that I think has a chance to be much better than what he has been with different coaching. When we come back, we've got a number of different scenarios to wrap up our annual simulation. I'm at 20 million right now. I believe Nick is very similar in his total. We've got a little money to work with, but things are starting to dry up a little bit. We're going to get to our last 6 scenarios that'll be coming up next year on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. And this offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 is validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. And you must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA, available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host here, Nick Lee. A special Blue Friday edition, diving into the offseason with free agency simulation. And, Nick, to this point, I have $20 million. I don't have your tab in front, but I've got $20 million to work with. How much do you have left as we get to this closing stretch?
Yeah, I have, I think, a little bit more room than that. I've been a little cheap. In that last segment, I was a little more thrifty. So I think I'm a couple million short of you.
Yeah, so we're both in decent position. There may be some opportunities to open up a little more room if we need it. Let's get to our next scenario here. Re-sign Noah Fant at $5 million or bring Drew Sample back, former Washington player, at $2 million.
There's another one where I'm going to kind of go on the cheaper end. I like Sample more as a willing run blocker. I do like Noah Fant. I think he's that typical, tight end, athletic tight end that's big body, can catch, can block a little bit. Drew Sample, I think, is a superior blocker at this point. And again, I'm going to hammer it home. I think the Seahawks should and will try to reestablish their identity as a running, physical team. And I think Drew Sample helps that a bit more than Noah Fant at this point, especially when there's a difference of about $3 million. So Drew Sample, and not like he's useless in the pass game either. He's got some ability there, but I like his ability in the run game. So give me Drew Sample for 2.
Yeah, I already repaid or re-signed Colby Parkinson. I just think Noah Fant wants to go somewhere else. I think he wants to be more of a featured piece in the passing game, and he might get more opportunities in Ryan Grubb's offense, but I've already brought back Parkinson, who's a little younger and is a better blocker, quite frankly. So I want that guy that is a little cheaper that I know can get after in the run game. And Drew Sample last year was one of the top 12 run blockers in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. So $2 million, that's an easy price tag for me. Going back to the safety position, re-sign Quandre Diggs at $6 million or bring Geno Stone in at $8 million to reunite with Mike McDonald.
Well, this might sound a little hypocritical since I was just talking about not paying safeties, but because I'm okay, to a certain point. And with the fit with Geno Stone, he had such a great year last year. He makes so much sense coming from Baltimore. I believe Pro Football Focus had him as the 8th best coverage safety in football last season. 53.3 passer rating allowed. Really good ball hawk, the interceptions. So I'm going to go with Geno Stone. I know that's kind of goes against what I just said, but I don't want to be paying buku bucks for both safety positions. And I think it's okay with this, the little bit more of a fit there. I've been a bit more thrifty and smarter in other ways to get Geno Stone, but I don't think that's a terribly, wasteful use of your resources. And I think Geno Stone can do a lot more than just, pick off balls. I think he can do a lot. I think he's actually quite a versatile safety. So give me Geno Stone at 8. I know that's splurging a bit, but I have a plan.
I am going to bring back Quandre Diggs because we've seen all these safeties that have gotten cut in the last few days, a number of veterans that are out there. I just don't think Quandre Diggs is going to be getting a lot of money thrown his way because of all the younger safeties that are out there. I still think he can play. I still think the Seahawks think he can play. And Geno Stone had a lot of arm punts that he intercepted last year. And that's not taking anything away from him, but he also missed a ton of tackles. I just have some reservations, honestly, after watching film about giving him a bunch of money based on 1 year. That can be a major issue in free agency. Quandre Diggs, you put him in a better position schematically, he is going to make the plays. And I just think on a 1-year deal, bringing him back cheaper, that it makes sense, and it saves me a little money here in this simulation as well. Our next one, we get a chance to open up some money at the receiver position, restructure Tyler Lockett, or, and this might sound crazy, but there are plenty of 12s out there that throw this idea out there, trade DK Metcalf and create $9 million in salary cap space.
Oh boy. Here we go. I'm going to say trade DK Metcalf. And I hate saying that. I love DK. I think he's a really fun receiver. One of the best, he's first team all body for sure in the NFL. But if they're in the mode of tearing down cap hits and they want their kind of players building from the inside out, I think those resources would be best served elsewhere and on the trenches and the interior of those trenches. Kind of like in baseball, you want to be strong up the middle, catching, pitching, second base, shortstop, center field, that kind of thing. In football, very similar. You want to be strong up the middle with, interior line on both sides. And I think that this would help. And also you might get a, nice draft pick or two back too. I'm not quite sure what the ins and outs of a possible DK Metcalf trade would feature, but that would be really hard because I like DK Metcalf. He's really fun to watch when he's on. But freeing up that kind of money is very, very enticing.
Yeah, I am not putting any entertaining into the idea of moving DK Metcalf. Hell no, that is not happening. Tyler Lockett is going to get restructured. Who knows what the future holds for him? But again, I mentioned this earlier. Jamal Adams, since you absorbed all that dead cap hit this year, you have a lot more flexibility to kick some cap down the road to next year. And I'm doing it with Tyler Lockett. Open up $7 million that I can maybe use real quick at another position group. And no, hell no, I'm not moving DK Metcalf. Not happening. Going back to the offensive line, sign Mike Onwenu, who previously played for the New England Patriots, or bring back Evan Brown, who has started games at center and guard in the NFL.
It's going to sound weird since I have a center already. But I'm going to go ahead and re-sign Evan Brown. And now he's been a good stopgap center. At worst, you put him at guard for depth there. I just signed Robert Hunt as well. But I also lost Damien Lewis. So I think re-signing Evan Brown, you got depth at center. Oluwatimi's still in that category too. But Evan Brown could at worst provide depth at both guard spots. So I'm going to re-sign Brown, especially with the difference in price there. And I've splurged a little bit more with the two other interior linemen I signed. So I'm going to go re-sign Evan Brown on the cheap there and provide some depth.
This is where I'm making my splash. Onwenu is one of the most underrated players in the league. And, oh, by the way, he's played at a high level at both guard spots and right tackle. And I'm looking at Abraham Lucas's knee. I'm hoping that surgery corrected things, but you need to have an insurance plan in place. And Onwenu played at a really high level last year at right tackle for New England. I think he's at his best inside, though, at 350 pounds. I am having him and Damien Lewis both playing together. I'm getting some beef. Let's get after it in the run game. So $9 million for me, Onwenu, that's no brainer. Oh, by the way, he's a Michigan guy. So Mike McDonald's probably going to like that about him too. Going to the trenches on the defensive side, trade Draymond Jones for $5 million or extend Jaron Reed for $3 million.
I don't want to trade Draymond Jones. I think that there's definitely more in the tank for him than he showed last year. I'm going to extend Jaron Reed. I really like what I saw from him last year. 4th on the team in total pressures. Had a bit of a resurgence as more of the 1-3 technique kind of interior lineman. So I'm going to go extend Jaron Reed, keep them both. And we'll see about a certain other big one coming up later as a tease. But I'm going to go extend Jaron Reed for now.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with that as well. I don't think you give up on Draymond Jones at this point. He's 27. I feel like he got hurt by the scheme and just this was really a common theme for the rest of the defense. It just seemed like the scheme was not put together right last year and the year before, quite frankly. So I want to see Draymond Jones with this new coaching staff and see if they can make it work. And Jaron Reed, I think he earned an extension with the way he played last year. And DTs can play at a high level into their mid-30s. He's only 32. Let's do it. Our last one here, we saved the best for last. I don't know if I have enough cap room to do one of these moves, but re-sign Leonard Williams or sign Patrick Queen. These are both going to be big money expenditures. So tough decision here, but you got to pick one, Nick.
I'm actually at 24 million of cap hit, of space. So I'm going to go with. So as far as looking between two fine players, two of some of the better players in their position, but my tiebreaker, Corbin, was where they play. And Leonard Williams is in the interior. I've been hammering that all show. I'm going to re-sign Leonard Williams, and especially if you bring back Jordan Brooks. And because you want to build from the interior out, I've been hammering that home. He's not even 30 years old. He'll be 30 years old before the season starts, but it kind of gives you a pay. I mean, he's not, like you said, they can play the high level for a long time, and he's not even 30 yet. One of the best, if not one of the top two, interior defensive linemen on the market. Get it done and sign him. Build that true building block in the middle, get stout and nasty there and be there for a long time. And with pairing him with Jaron Reed, I like, perhaps a bounce back from Draymond Jones. That is a darn good threesome right there along the interior defensive line.
Yeah, I'm going to bring back Leonard Williams too. I mean, I re-signed Jordan Brooks, who I think could be every bit as good, if not better, than Patrick Queen playing for Mike McDonald. I am that confident in him playing in this system, playing for that coach. I want to see that happen. Leonard Williams has to be brought back. He was one of the best defensive players, one of the few bright spots after that trade. And you did give up a second-round pick for him. I can't stand when you trade that kind of draft capital, then you don't get the guy back. This guy has a lot of great football left in him. So, yeah, it's going to put me very close to being at the cap, but $11 million, let's do it. Let's get him back with Draymond Jones and company, and let's see if this coaching staff can maximize the talent that they've got. As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at NickLee51. Check out Locked On Seahawks and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back on Monday, legal tampering period is going to be opening across the NFL. We got some fun stuff coming up. Sure going to be some news as well. We'll be diving into the latest free agency scoop and much more. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.